Did you know that 5 million children die each year related to the dehydration that goes with diarrhea? I was flabbergasted. I was shocked. I had no idea. These were the words of a man that I met in his office way back in 1983 in Geneva. At the time, I was in the real estate business of my father. He was a very successful real estate developer in the Netherlands, the first, as a matter of fact. And through his Parkinson's disease, I got involved in his business at quite a young age, and I needed to succeed him. We did many projects, offices, homes, apartments, and shopping centers. And one of the shopping centers I like to show you, the shopping center Hilvershof in our downtown center of Hilversum. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about competition, winning, losing, management, but also about caring, because my father could not speak that well. In a way, I had to translate, and sometimes I had to keep his hanky in front of his eye because of the dripping saliva. So I also learned to take care. I've been there for nearly 20 years, and after 20 years I thought, this is enough. I saw a lot of repetition. I wanted to move on with my life and wanted to do something more useful. So I decided to start and work for humanity. In the meantime, my dad had died, and he left us, the children, a substantial inheritance. So in a way, I was free. Back to Geneva, in the office, a small office. It was a hot summer day. On the other side of the table was Hans Heuk. Hans was the Secretary General of the League of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. He said, this is enormous. I myself had no idea either. But how is it possible? Say, earlier this year, a plane came down at the Potomac in Washington. Nearly 80 people killed. It makes the headlines in all the media. And here are 50 planes every day with 250 underwives on board, dying, killed. Why didn't we not know? We had no idea. He said, this I want to bring out. I think in the West we were too busy, too much preoccupied with our own stuff. He said, I want to launch a huge campaign. In 4 months' time, we have the General Assembly of Red Cross and Red Crescent Society together here with 130 countries involved. I won't go through all the bureaucracy. I'm going to launch this program directly with the authority, with Jim Grant, at the time, the Secretary General of UNICEF. He said, are you willing to step in as a leader? To make a long story short, I pondered about it, and I said after a few days, I said, okay, I will volunteer. So it was that the General Assembly took the decision that we could start, and within a few weeks, our program, our Child Alive program, was born. We had a great team with highly qualified and dedicated people. I was one of them, but honestly, I consider myself the least qualified of the whole team. We have worked with a lot of enthusiasm, and from our general headquarters in Geneva, we assisted many national societies, especially in Latin America as well as in Africa. You can imagine that it was a kind of whole new life for me, with a lot of traveling into areas that I didn't know. There were a lot of lessons to learn. And I'd like to share with you 3 important ones. You may recognize it too. First of all, the theme of help. Like many of the people there, they rushed from the headquarters in Geneva into Africa in a way full of stress exporting their stress in already very vulnerable communities. I was one of them. I learned that if I really want to help people, I need to be patient with myself. And I was not patient with myself. There was a long way to come there. Lesson 1. Lesson 2. Lesson 2 was, I forgot to tell you, there's a great intervention that Hans mentioned in the office still, which is oral rehydration salts. Oral rehydration salts is a combination of salt, sugar, and water that you give in a certain relation to one another, in a certain combination, and it is highly effective. 90% of the children will survive. It is cheap, and you don't need a doctor. Everybody, mom, dad, granny, brother or sister can give it. And by the way, on top of that, it is a natural thing. So salt, sugar, and water, you can find nearly anywhere in nature. So what I learned, lesson 2, was that if we have such a thing, such a cheap intervention, the industry, the business world, was hardly interested because the cost price was that cheap and the buying power for the millions of poor families was not there. So what to do? The great thing that I learned, there were millions of dedicated volunteers and people at NGOs that help to introduce from the heart these interventions. The third lesson was that if we want to teach somebody something, as we all may have experience in that, you can tell you need to know that and that and that. But if you come into a complete different culture, you have to build bridges. So if I have not an interest in really learning from other people or being interested in their stories, what's going to happen? It will never stick. So it's only when we really build bridges, bridges of trust, bridges of showing vulnerability, that we can have successful interventions. A little bit water. So, yes, I've worked there for 3 years at Red Cross in Geneva. Again, I learned many lessons. And when I left, we looked back. Our program was working in 19 countries. And because of the 40th anniversary of UNICEF, we got, for one of the most successful programs in the world, we got the Maurice Pater Award. As said, after 3 years, it was done, and I moved back with my family to the Netherlands. I didn't want to go back anymore into the business world full-time. Yes, of course, there were investments that I needed to supervise, but most of my time I really wanted to dedicate to the empowerment of people. In the last 30 years, it has been mentioned already, we co-financed ideas of other people, hundreds of them in more than 50 countries, and we realized several projects ourselves, of which I like to mention an integral healthcare center in the Netherlands, a bone marrow transplant unit together with President Gorbachev in Moscow for the child victims of Chernobyl. And the third project we realized was a peace center in Bosnia for the victims of the Balkan War. We brought there together people from the different religions in order to go through all kinds of programs. As said, I started to reflect. Of course, I did as well in Geneva before. And what I'm now going to tell you is not the easiest story, but I sat back and I kind of experienced a universe, and in that universe, planet Earth. You can see the planet here, it's a small version of it. And I realized that everything in that universe coexists. Everything was a kind of dynamic dance of change. I saw people embedded in nature. I saw people embedded in urban structures. So it was a kind of continuous dance that expressed itself, say, from high density, deep in the earth, to the most subtle fields at the edges of our universe. It was a dance more like a choir singing in togetherness in dynamic harmony. I also saw the function of the planet. It holds us all together. There is no competition. Everything, everybody coexists with one another. And we move from place to place to place, but we can never be at the same place at the same time. So it made me kind of humble, that feeling of togetherness. I didn't see anymore life and gravity, because gravity holds us together, as a given, but as a gift. And for a gift, I can be grateful. I can be humble. It makes me more humble and more modest. The dance of particles that I saw was a kind of general theme that ran through my life as from then. So why do we here believe in scarcity? The whole idea of economy is based on scarcity. So from this perspective, where everything is together, there is no scarcity, there is abundance. Scarcity, in my way of looking, relates to fear. Fear is okay, but as love is, well, fear is okay. But from that fear, we start to compete. We start to exclude instead of what I saw, all inclusion. So I started to think further, and I realized, let's stop competing, but let us cooperate and compare with care in order to share with care. When we do things careful, when we make decisions related to improvement of efficiency, it's run through our ratio. But if we do it with care, it has the chance to come through our hearts. It's not rational, but we all know, especially the feminine side in us, know that if we really have time, we sit back and reflect, that there will be made different decisions. So what I said, with competing, nothing is wrong as long as we respect human rights, as long as we take into account the natural laws of our inhabitat, our nature, of our nature. So, reflecting on that, I thought, what is that heart? That heart connects. So if we filter in a way our thoughts through our hearts, we will not get decisions that are just called decisions. Thoughts that are not filtered through our heart risk to go like unguided missiles through space and hit and harm. Love is in the heart, unconditional love. That brings me to a quote of a friend of mine a long time ago, Jerry Jampolsky. He said, "Where there's love, there is no fear. Where there's fear, there is no love. Love is letting go of fear." I am a student of life. I'm an idealist too. But I go flat on my face many, many times. But I equally stand up the same number of times up again too. The theme today is closer together. My specific theme is closer to harmony. My suggestion would be, when we go home tonight, to take the time and talk from the position of our heart to the heart of the other person. Let the ratio be at rest, not from mind to mind, but from heart to heart. I wish you miles of smiles and a wonderful, wonderful, inspirational, loving life. Thank you very much.